Greetings, everyone. I'm excited to welcome Ibrahim Ashqar, co-founder and CEO at Lumi. Ibrahim, welcome to the show.
Ben, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here. Let's dive right in. Tell us a little bit about your background.
For sure. Ibrahim Ashqar, CEO and co-founder of Lumi AI. Basically spent my entire career working in data and AI roles. Prior to founding Lumi, I was the director of data science at a supply chain technology unicorn, Stored. And before that, I spent a number of years within Deloitte's artificial intelligence practice, building enterprise-grade data products for Fortune 500 type companies. And that's also where I met my co-founder and CTO tutor. We were on the same projects, delivering things together. And we started Lumi about 2 years ago to solve problems we saw across all the companies we've worked at or consulted for.
Okay, so definitely deep experience in data science and data analytics. So that makes a ton of sense. So yeah, let's talk about Lumi. What products and or services does it offer?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we started Lumi because, again, we mentioned Tutor and I noticed that across all the companies we've seen, a lot of them are just spending a lot of money investing in tools to building dashboards, setting up data warehouse, data lake setups, have a lot of big data teams, and data teams are not cheap, mind you. But despite all of this investment, they're still being plagued with not being able to access the insights and basic data needed to effectively drive decision making. Business intelligence is often synonymous with dashboards. It's just a current state of the land. But the reality is having more dashboards doesn't give you more insights, right? If anything, having too many dashboards only causes confusion and mistrust in the data. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not hating on dashboards. I think having centralized dashboard is a fantastic starting point, but the real insights, the one that move the needle, still often require hours of manual spreadsheet analysis and oftentimes the ability to code in SQL or Python, a skill set that is usually reserved by more technical data folks who are just constantly swamped with requests from the business teams demanding custom insights as of yesterday. And so this is a big operational problem. And so that's kind of why we started Lumi, to democratize the access to insights, make that process of exploring enterprise data. We're primarily focused on brands and retail. So, brand, supply chain and retail data, make that process as simple as asking a question. And so you could think of Lumi as your own personal data analyst that's available 24/7, powered by what we call agentic workflows that mirror how a skilled human would think and work.
Okay, and I was just going to ask, it seems like the market for this is pretty big, but right now you're focused on brands and retailers and or supply chain. So what is that, let's say, that niche as far as industries that you're after?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's true. The technology can be broadly applicable, but we're taking a focused approach with our go-to-market and our technology to focusing only on kind of companies that have a certain type of data in particular. And those tend to be companies with supply chain operations. So people in manufacturing, brands, retailers. So think of these as the companies that are powered, they use SAP, Oracle, Microsoft Dynamics as their ERP. And, they have a lot of inventory type data, sales header, sales line, procurement. That's kind of the data sets that we work with because we know this data set well. We know how, the big ERPs, the ones that power majority of the customers, how those tables are structured. And we're able to kind of quickly go in there and, enable this more conversational capabilities for analytics and just be able to extract insights by just asking questions. And, the use cases are repeated. So we're able to kind of increase our implementation timelines and things like that. And if we look ahead, there's some verticalization, some features that are going to be very much specific to just enabling actions writing back to the ERP. And so that's kind of our focus area.
And when we think about supply chain, that long supply chain, is it the end, say the retailer or the manufacturer or anyone kind of involved where there's just a lot of this type of data?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when I think of supply chain, I think of it slightly differently within kind of the domains, so to speak. So if you think about it, you have your raw materials, your sourcing to getting the procurement. From there, your manufacturing. So there's production planning. Once it's manufactured, it's in your warehouse. You have your logistics and distribution, and then you have a last mile delivery. So it's like from source to deliver kind of a thing. That's how I think of supply chain. The areas where we kind of come in are more so on, we definitely have work in the sourcing procurement space. So we have a lot of capabilities kind of enabling insights there. and as well as the logistics distribution, so the warehouse operations. But what we also help with is a lot of the strategic supply chain planning on top. So think of your demand planning or supply chain planning functions. Part of any company's, S&OP process, sales and operating plan process is, all right, what's the forecast? How much are we forecasting? That's like demand planning's responsibility, figuring out how much is needed or what's needed. And then supply planning is like, okay, well, based on this forecast, what raw materials do I need? How do I source them? Who do I source them from? They kind of trickle all of those. So that's kind of where, when I say supply chain, those are the functions where we cater to. FP&A tends to also kind of be somewhat involved here, but yeah, they're closely intertwined with, supply chain and finance are famously intertwined for a long time.
Yeah. And for those in FP&A, we know we're very data hungry. So that'd be a lot of great data to latch on to. So it sounds like these are pretty large customers who have these supply chains. So who are you selling into? Do they have heads of data science or analytics that you're trying to find within these companies?
Correct. Yeah, that's primarily it. If you're a business that's still operating in spreadsheets, we're likely not the tool for you. We definitely deal with companies who have invested in like an SAP or an Oracle, and these tend to be more mid-market to enterprise. So that's currently who we cater to. Mid-sized brands and 3PLs all the way to Fortune 10 retailers. So that's kind of who we work with. We've also partnered with consulting firms like it's part of our go-to-market strategy, like Deloitte, BCG, and others who implement Lumi at their clients as well. So that's typically the clientele we have. Whether it's the director of analytics or the VP of analytics, or it's like the director of supply chain analytics, it's really dependent on the company and how they're set up. Some of them have centralized COEs for data, and others are more embedded within the function itself. Mm-hmm. Essentially, the executive that's responsible for serving insights and analytics to their peers is who would be our main kind of champion buyer, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Appreciate the insight. So let's talk some stats and figures. So what year did you found Lumi?
We started Lumi in mid 2023. So it's just been shy of 2 years now.
Okay, so almost 2 years. And do you have a headquarters location?
Yeah, majority of the engineering team is primarily based out of Toronto, downtown Toronto. That's kind of where we all kind of meet up. But we do have a few people who are scattered more remotely as well.
Okay. And then what's your current team size?
In total, we're a small team of 11, mostly engineers, senior engineers, those who've worked at Google and Amazon and SAP and things like that. We also have a product designer. He's awesome, Anton. And then we have one person, Anthony, who's helping out on the go-to-market and customer implementation side of things. Majority of the team's fairly technical. Yeah, that's us.
Yeah, makes sense. And then anything you want to share around revenue or ARR ranges?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're currently still in the 6-figure ranges for ARR, but we're on track to hitting 7 figures fairly soon. So that's pretty exciting. We just closed our seed round not too long ago, and we're kind of chasing that Series A in just a few months.
Oh, that's great. It's great. That'll be a big milestone hitting 7 figures ARR. And then, so you mentioned fundraising, perfect pivot now. But actually, before we get that, one more question. So go to market, you're 2 years in, closing in on 7 figures ARR. And you mentioned kind of the partner channel, maybe Deloitte selling your product into these companies. What is that initial go to market motion that seems to be working right now?
For sure. I mean, we do get a decent amount of inbounds. About 15% of our leads have come through the website, just people organically signing up, and seems to be the right profiles of people. We've attracted VPs at Fortune 10s reaching out and things like that. So that's clearly working. But we're primarily outbound sales focused, I'd say, and typically our approach is more focused on education. That's the best way to kind of engage with people. We've realized people have always lauded how refreshing it is to kind of speak to us, because we're not coming in as like a sales, but we're coming in as like, here's just education about the future of analytics. Here's our point of view on the natural shift from the legacy way of doing analytics to the kind of the new standard in analytics using agents. The whole concept of, instead of having to respond to every single ad hoc request, data teams would now spend most of their time managing the system that does. And so it's more of an education, and that tends to work well with us. Our conversion metrics, we track first meeting to second meeting to kind of close or pilot and then close. Those are pretty, pretty healthy, I would say, higher than industry standards. If but I guess it shifts from industry to industry. That's a big one for us. And then the consulting partners is another channel that's really exciting for us. That we've established some very clear ways of working, good relationships with senior partners, those kind of leading data and analytics for retail and things like that. And it's a very healthy relationship for them. They're helping out their clients solve problems with data access. So we fit in naturally into any strategy that involves improving access to data. Deloitte, these big companies, big consulting companies, are now selling Gen AI work that's really attractive to them. They're implementing this stuff, so they're increasing revenues, and they also use it as a project delivery tool. So that's worked really well. And then from us, we get we get access to clients that we would otherwise not been able to get to, because we're coming in as like trusted advisors of their trusted advisors, so to speak. So that's been fairly well for us.
I appreciate that overview. And one more question before we get to capital is, so you obviously have connections at Deloitte working there, but for other founders listening who think, hey, my product would be great for those big consulting firms, is it a pretty strenuous process to get approved and have them feel comfortable for them to recommend or resell your product into these large companies where reputation is so important?
There was definitely a clearance process,
Mhm.
like you got to go through for sure. But that just standard with every single company, even the ones where we target ourselves, the big enterprise, there's always some sort of security clearance, AI committee, whatever. All of those things you gotta go through, procurement, legal. So that's fine. But I would say consulting firms are always looking for new tools and what's out there and providing recommendations, because they want to be helpful to their clients, right? In reality, like the best kind of consultant is the one that's impartial. There's like they just want to help their clients solve problems, and if that problem often involves people, process, technology, it's like, okay, well, do you build this technology in house? Do we build it for you, or do you partner with someone? And if you can kind of something that worked well, I think Celonis, another ERP analytics company, they've done this fairly well. It's a C4C, Celonis for consulting kind of a thing, where it's like they actually gave consulting firms free access to the platform. It's like, just use it, try it, demo it to your clients, and if they like it, let's chat. So I do think for clients, for those founders who don't have access to, or didn't come from a consulting background, don't have access to them, I would say, I think you have a fair shot in kind of reaching out to someone saying, hey, can I get your feedback on our tool or our platform, and see what they say. And if they like you, most or not, they'll introduce you to more people, and you can climb up your way to eventually get to the partners and things like that.
Yeah, that's great insight, because it's just like you want to make your boss's life easier. If you can make a consultant look better, they're probably open ears. So yeah, I love that. So let's talk fundraising. You mentioned some raises, and maybe one coming up here. So how much capital have you raised to date?
We've raised 3.7 million to date from institutional investors, VC firms in Silicon Valley, New York, and also overseas. So Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund is invested in us, and then a few other strategic angels here and there.
Okay, and is that USD or Canadian?
USD.
USD. Okay, so 3.7 raised to date. And then tell us, so 2 years in, when did that last raise happen?
So we announced not too long ago, but actually in reality, we kind of closed it in the end of last year. We just kind of waited for a bit to kind of things solidify. We had other priorities than announce the raise. Plus, we wanted to use the raise as a very strategic way to just increase top of funnel, right? And we wanted to be in a position where we can reap the benefits from it. And fortunate to say that the announcement went really well, got a lot of traction. Our news, the news got published 477 times, lots of interactions on LinkedIn, and we got some pretty high profile demos kind of booked from companies following the announcement. So that's worked well, and we timed it well there. So that's when we closed it about a few months ago, and announced it just a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, that's great. And we covered it on my SaaS News site at thesaasnews.com. So, and growing site for that. So end of last year. And so tell me, for that, I think it was characterized as a seed round.
Right.
And tell us, was there a trigger or milestone that led to that raise that said we are ready for more capital and can make use of it?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, actually. I think there's a list of things that helped us raise, I think, in the last round. Obviously, having good founder market fit is paramount, especially at these early stages, because you're the subject matter expert, you know the pain point. I think it adds a lot of credibility, and investors want to see that. So I think that's given. I would say we at that point we had clear differentiation. I would say we had a bit of a early time, a bit of a murky, harder time trying to establish our differentiation. People kept calling us a BI tool and things like that when we were not a BI tool. Right? We're not looking to replace your Tableaus or Power BIs because I think it's naive to say that you can go on the current incumbents territory and kind of beat them at their game. They've been there for 20 plus years, so that's not there. But we eventually crafted out a very clear narrative and a picture that makes it very easy and intuitive for our audience to just understand where we fit and how we're complementary skill set or toolkit or tool in their kit, and not just trying to replace your BI tool. So clear differentiation and where you fit in the client's tech stack was important to have. A deep understanding of the competitive landscape was important, especially kind of from an investor perspective and also from a customer perspective. People always ask, okay, what about this? What about that? And being able to handle these objections in a way was useful. One, it's helped us definitely convert clients, and then two, from an investor perspective, it very much showed that we knew kind of the space and we were very deliberate about our approach and what our thoughts are on some of the competitors there. Another one's having a compelling demo. I think nothing beats or gets investors excited than just seeing a really good demo. And so you need that. And then the final thing I would say, and this is probably the most important, is traction, right? You need to have traction. And there's two ways to having traction. In ours, we had compelling funnel metrics, as I mentioned. I don't think it was a representation that we have found product market fit. I'd still think that we're finding that. But rather, our funnel metrics, what they clearly demonstrated was idea market fit, right? That that this notion of what we're selling is resonating a lot in the market. And then that compelling funnel metrics, coupled with just having signed a few customers, and some of them were some big household names, got people excited, got our investors excited. Some of these customers of ours even vouched for us in front of the investors, so that was awesome from them, and forever grateful for them to kind of do that for us. But those are some of the things that I think helped us raise the round, and any founder kind of looking to raise their next round would recommend kind of thinking through these points as well.
Yeah, and that's great insight there. A lot of gold nuggets there. And I love, I've heard a lot, like we have product market fit and all these things, but founder investor fit, but I like the founder market fit, which getting to team experience and your heavy experience in data science. And then also again, idea market fit and the funnel metrics, not necessarily like, hey, I'm closing deals every single day, but the funnel's building, like you said, the message is resonating in the market, and it always helps to have a global brand vouch for you. So appreciate that insight. That's great stuff. And then you coming from industry and then founding your own company, were there any fundraising surprises, big lessons learned in that last raise?
Yeah, that was a whole new world for me. I come from a somewhat technical background, data, product. That's been my whole experience so far. And then all of a sudden had to jump into legal and finance and, the intricacies of how a safe works, price rounds, all of these things. So yeah, learned quite a lot along this journey. A few kind of things that kind of popped to mind that may be helpful for the audience here was, some of the fundraising lessons here is that, when we went on initially, when I on LinkedIn, when I announced that I'm going on stealth, I thought I was just telling the world like, hey, don't bother me. I'm going under a rock to kind of work on this. But in reality, it gives us a lot more visibility. Just by virtue of going on stealth, you somehow end up on a lot of crawlers. And we got so much organic inbound from investors that way. So instead of doing cold outbound to investors, which really doesn't work at scale because investors get 1 million emails a day from people looking to raise money, and standing out requires a lot of effort. So it's not really viable at scale. We got a lot of interest organically from kind of people reaching out to us because they're like, hey, we see you're in stealth. We like your background. What are you working on? So that was interesting. I didn't think that was going to behave that way, but it did. So that was good. A lot of founders looking kind of to raise capital as well. Emailing investors is one way, but be very targeted because takes time, and it's very easy for investors just quick short attention spans to get so many emails to like not miss you. So I would say optimize for warm intros. Ask your network to connect you with investors. And when you do meet an investor, ask them to connect you with one other investor who may be interested. So that's kind of some lesson there. Qualifying investors is important. Don't just accept meetings with any investor who comes your way. Make sure that you fit their thesis, because some investors may not even invest at that early stage or in that vertical or anything like that. They have like a minimum check size and you don't fit it, or it's too much or whatever. So always make sure to qualify your investors before taking the meeting, because otherwise it's a waste of your time. And it's fine to ask them these questions in an email before scheduling the meeting. So I think people are like, oh, I'm scared to ask the investor. No, you shouldn't be at all. Other things that some lessons is that having a compelling blurb is very helpful. Some of the things, 4 themes that I like to put in a good blurb are like, what's the problem that you're going after? What's the solution? What's the traction, and who's the team? Those are like the 4 points you want to kind of mention in like a short blurb. And then, this is like 2 parts. Have like 2 versions of your deck ready, and always use DocSend. I think, your pitch deck can go out of date pretty quickly as you update it. So DocSend's a great way to make sure you're always, whatever link you share with the investor, they have the latest version to your pitch deck. And always have 2 versions, like a teaser deck and a full deck. So the teaser deck, the whole objective of it is, in case someone's like, oh, show me what you have before we hop on a meeting. The whole idea is, the objective of there is just to get the investor to want to speak to you, book a meeting. And then the full deck with the appendix and all the slides is something you send to the investor after you met with them and walk them through the material. You don't want to send them the full deck to begin with, because that could overwhelm them with information and be like, all right, I don't want. So you just want to send them a teaser and then get them on the line, then walk them through it. Those are most of the things that come to mind, I guess.
Oh, that's great stuff. And I love the whole stealth that created inbound interest from investors, because there are companies out there now that's scrape the internet looking for startups and sell startups, to then sell that data to investors to get in before others get in. So that's really interesting, because before it's like, oh, another founder going into stealth, but now actually maybe that is a little go-to-market motion in itself to get some initial interest. So great insight there. Great lessons learned. So really appreciate that. And then Ibrahim, at this stage of your business, do you have a favorite number metric that you're focused on, whether that's financial and or operational, to guide and manage your business?
For sure. I think from a financial perspective, ARR is king. That's what we're chasing, increasing ARR there. But internally, our North Star metric is something we call stickiness. It's a measure of engagement. It's essentially checking how often has a user used Lumi since they got access, and we're tracking key events within their usage of Lumi to see like, okay, were they a user or not? And we're trying to see like, okay, how often does this user return? They've had access to Lumi for about a month now. How many times in that month did they log in? Did they log in 5 times, or did they log in 20 times? And we kind of use that as a measure of stickiness. Everything we build is focused on helping move the needle, the stickiness needle, in the right direction, right? So that's kind of what we're focused on at the moment.
Okay. Yeah. So ARR always, that's a very popular answer, and then of course stickiness and product usage. So Ibrahim, really appreciate your time today. As we wrap up, what's coming up next for Lumi?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the short to medium term, as I mentioned, everything we're building is helping, it's around focus on moving the stickiness needle in the right direction. And for us, that just means features that reduce time to value, right? And so there's like two parts to this, or really 3 parts to this. One is like, how do you streamline onboarding, get people in the door faster? There's a lot of, that helps reduce time to value, and that helps improve stickiness. Second one is a more intuitive interface. There's a lot of defensibility in interfaces, especially in the application layer with agentic workflows. And so having a more intuitive interface means people can, craft better prompts faster, and in turn get value out of the system better. And so that's a huge focus area for us there. And then the third part is the underlying engine under the hood, which is making it more sophisticated, making these workflows more sophisticated, capable of answering a wider a range of more vague questions and more complicated questions. So that's everything in the short to medium term. But eventually, our long-term goal is to becoming this go-to platform of choice for brands and retailers looking for a way to automatically extract insights from their databases, data warehouses, and take actions. And I think that's like the promise of agentic workflows as a whole, and why this whole space, there's so much hype around it and excitement, is this inability to not just surface insights, but also take action on them, right? And that's kind of what we're aiming to become. And that's kind of why we're also verticalized, because that's the only way you can enable actions by verticalization. So that's our longer term play here with Lumi.
Well, that's great. Always a lot of stuff to work on with a startup. So 2 years in, so it sounds like things are going well. So Ibrahim, really appreciate your time today. If listeners would like to learn more about Lumi, where should we send them online?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me there, follow me or whatever, or even through our website. That's lumi-ai.com. So we have a ton of resources there, good blogs, documentation about the future of analytics. And if you're interested in a demo, you can always sign up if you think it can help add value to your business. So that's how it is.
Well, appreciate the insight today. Some great golden nuggets there. And so if you'd like to learn more, check out Lumi, LUMI-AI.com to learn more. And Ibrahim, really appreciate your time today and sharing your journey.
Ben, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.